Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you're doing well. I hope your families are safe and healthy. We're going to give everyone just a minute here to get online. I know people are still joining in at the moment. I did want to run through a couple of housekeeping items. In the interest of time, the Senator is going to respond to a few questions towards the end. We did ask many of you to pre-submit those questions. We received a number of questions, so we're going to have the Senator field 5 of those. And then any additional questions we received, we will send on straight to Senator Cornyn's office for his team to get back to us on. So I did want to let you know, see questions that we're going to be able to field today. And in the interest of the Senator's time, we're going to keep that relatively short before continuing on with our program. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody again for joining us this morning. On behalf of our chairman, Raj Kalyandur, our board of directors, and all of our members, I want to welcome you to the U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce Zoom webinar and town hall with Senator John Cornyn. Senator, we are really honored to have you with us this morning. I know your schedule is packed and you're fielding a lot of different queries from constituents across the state and of course across the nation. So we're really honored that you are spending a few minutes with us this morning. Senator Cornyn has been overwhelmingly reelected multiple times in Texas. He was elected to the Senate many years ago, most recently in 2014. He has committed himself to strengthening our national defense, securing our borders, repairing our broken immigration system, and strengthening the economy by keeping taxes low, reducing federal spending, and fighting job-killing regulations, which I know many of our members are very, very appreciative of. He serves on the Senate Finance Committee and the Intelligence and Judiciary Committees, where he has helped to craft legislation to benefit many Texans across the state. And from 2013 to 2018, Senator Cornyn was chosen by his colleagues to serve as a whip, the second highest ranking position among Senate Republicans. He has served the people of Texas for the last 3 decades in various capacities, and he's been a great friend to the chamber. And Senator, we are truly honored to have you as a friend. Thank you for being a champion for our members, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Neil. I understand that A.K. Mago, who was one of the ones who actually introduced me to the Indian American Chamber, and particularly there in DFW, is on the call as well. So let me give him a little shout out. You might be interested to know that I did get a chance to talk to the new U.S. ambassador from India, who actually is coming back to Washington after another assignment. And we talked quite a bit about what is happening in India with the coronavirus. And Prime Minister Modi has, of course, ordered an additional shelter in place to try to mitigate the danger there. But at least so far, it sounds like things are in pretty good shape. The problem is, as we all know, that this virus likes congested environments. And when you have 1.3 billion people, as you do in India, that's a real challenge. But I'm sure that everybody wishes Prime Minister Modi and the people of India well in dealing with this global pandemic. I'm glad the U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce of DFW and the Greater Dallas Asian American Chamber have joined us in teaming up for this call, because the purpose is to provide you as much information about resources as I possibly can, recognizing that North Texas was one of the hardest hit in our state. I know it's been a difficult time for a lot of you, not only as business owners and employers, but as parents, friends, and neighbors. Because many of you have family in India, and Asia and other parts of the world, we've been monitoring the global effects of this crisis, and in our hopes that together we can flatten the curve for this pandemic as much as possible. I would also like to say that I am deeply disturbed by some of the acts of racial discrimination that have taken place during this crisis. We are fortunate in America to live in an incredibly diverse state that's benefited from the contributions of all those who've come to our state and chosen to call Texas home. And unfortunately, some people have seen this as an invitation or an opportunity for hateful rhetoric. But I just want to say how unfortunate that is, and how disrespectful that is, and how irrational that is. And it has no place in a civil society. So let's talk about the 3 bills that Congress has passed now to deal with this virus. I know as Neil was introducing me, she was talking about my record of fiscal responsibility. Well, unfortunately, this is a time when we have an emergency where the federal government has to spend a lot of money in order to bolster our healthcare providers, as well as to try to make sure that we get resources to the states and to the hot spots and the places that need this most. But we also need to make sure that we get money into the hands of people who, through no fault of their own, don't have a paycheck. So let me first start with the healthcare issue. The CARES Act, which President Trump signed just a couple of weeks ago now, provided $100 billion to hospitals. $30 billion of that's already been released. And of course, we know that masks, gloves, and other personal protective equipment are essential in treating people in hospitals today. And unfortunately, we've learned a few things about our supply chain for medical equipment and our dependency on China. I actually talked to the ambassador about that too. And I said, maybe out of this pandemic, there is an opportunity for India and the United States to reestablish alternative supply chains from a fellow democracy and one that embraces transparency like India does. But this bill also cuts red tape and speeding up the process for making vaccines, and hopefully the 70 clinical trials that are currently underway will come up with treatment that will be both safe and effective. And there's a lot of great ideas out there, but we really need to have those clinical trials completed. So the direct assistance to Texans that many of you all have heard about is now en route. We thought this was important, particularly for people who worked in the service industry, who through no fault of their own don't have a paycheck while they're huddled in place with their family at home and not going to work. We need to make sure people have money to pay for the necessities of life, like food and rent. And so we sent are in the process of sending up to $3,400 to a family with a household income of up to $150,000. That would be $1,200 per person for the adults and up to $500 for children, for a maximum of $3,400. Now that's based obviously on a sliding scale of income. Maximum family income for that would be $150,000 for that full benefit. But we also know that in addition to cash payments to help people with a bridge to hopefully make sure that they can support their families, we knew that expanded unemployment insurance was important. And we both extended the breadth of unemployment coverage to cover independent contractors and nonprofits, but also extended the duration for an additional 13 weeks through the end of the year. Finally, we added an additional $600 a week benefit on top of the state's portion. Now, I know the Texas Workforce Commission has been absolutely crushed with applications as people have been losing their jobs. But I know, talking to Governor Abbott, that they are on that task and they are doing everything they can with all the resources they have available to make that an easier and more expeditious process. Perhaps the most significant part of this legislation was the support for small businesses that Elsie Collins from the Small Business Administration is on the call, and she'll be able to answer and talk you through some specifics. But we knew it was really important not only that we defeat this virus, but that we also make sure that the small businesses that are the primary employers of Texans and Americans were still in business after this crisis passes. And so we created a $350 billion program called the Paycheck Protection Program through SBA certified lenders. You've heard a lot about this because it's been enormously successful. It provides up to 8 weeks of cash flow assistance to small businesses. These are low interest loans that can be used to cover overhead, including payroll. And if the employer maintains their payroll until June, all of this loan will be completely forgiven. There's been an incredible run on these funds, and that's why it's so important that later this week, no later than Thursday, that the Senate and the House come together and pass an additional $250 billion to replenish that fund, because according to current projections, it will be out of money by then. But Texas has been the #1 beneficiary in the country with $21 billion in loans under this Paycheck Protection Program. And so I'm hopeful that we will rise to the occasion and rise above partisanship, certainly, and dysfunction, and actually get this done. Finally, this legislation also included funding for the Minority Business Development Agency business centers. In addition to the Small Business Administration, the Dallas Minority Business Development Agency Business Center is an excellent resource for information as you navigate these uncertain times. Finally, for larger employers like our airlines, we're home to 2 major airlines, American and Southwest Airlines. There was an additional $500 billion for the Treasury's Economic Stabilization Fund to offer a source of capital. $46 billion of this is for specific industries like commercial airlines and cargo air carriers. But the remaining $454 billion will be to provide loans for qualifying businesses, states, and municipalities through the Federal Reserve. Obviously, here again, the goal is to protect workers, keep businesses afloat, and to make sure that we come out of this ready to rebound as quickly as we can. I know this has been painful for a lot of people, and I've talked to some major employers, particularly in the North Texas area, where they've had to lay off tens of thousands of employees. My hope is that this Economic Stabilization Fund will provide them resources they need to not only help their employees, but make sure that they make their way through these uncertain times and are there to rebound when the coronavirus is contained. So as I said, I've been in touch with many of you about the process for assistance, and Elsie will be on the call when I depart. But of course, many of you also know Colin McLaughlin, my regional director there in Dallas, and I'd encourage you to reach out to him if I can ever be of further assistance. So thanks to all of my friends in the DFW region for making this call possible, and I'm happy to take some questions. So let me turn it back over to Neil.
Thank you, Senator. AK wanted to share just a brief couple of remarks, and then I will jump into the questions we've received.
Very good.
Senator, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, AK.
Appreciate your helping the state of Texas and the businesses that really need the federal government's help. I just want to share with you, while you are taking care of the whole state of Texas, here in the Dallas area, the DFW Hindu community has been serving lunch to our healthcare workers and first responders. We started this program last week and have been serving about 600 meals every day. And we plan to do it as long as there is a need. We started with Parkland, going to UT Southwest, Baylor, and other hospitals, and the entire Dallas Police Department and the Plano. So again, thanks for what you are doing. And hopefully this thing will be over soon. And
Good.
look forward to see you in person.
Thanks, AK. Thanks for everything you do and the whole Indo-American Chamber. You're a critical part of the community there in North Texas and around the state. So thanks so much.
So Senator, we've received a number of questions from our members. And like I said, I will go through 6 of those this morning with you. And then all of the additional questions, we will have them sent over to your office and they can be answered in due time. So the first question is, last week, it seemed as if Congress may be able to pass additional funding for the Paycheck Protection Program, but it seems like that may have been derailed. Do you know what is happening on that front? Do you expect any additional funding to come through?
Yes, I do. This was a bipartisan piece of the CARES Act. And as I mentioned a moment ago, that's been enormously popular and very successful after a few initial glitches in getting money to the people who need it the most, the small businesses who it was intended for. But we're on a trend line to run out of money this coming Thursday. And so Senator McConnell's offered a clean bill to not change any policy, but just to replenish the amount of money for that Paycheck Protection Program. And that was, as I said, a bipartisan policy, which has been very, very successful. So I support the additional $250 billion that he's trying to add. So far, there's been a standoff because there have been demands for other funding to be added to that. But this is really a question of priorities, because most of the funding that we have voted on in the CARES Act, $2.2 trillion, has not gone out the door yet. And so it seems to me to be premature to talk about sending more money when we don't know, well, when the initial tranche of money has not actually been distributed, other than the Paycheck Protection Program. So this is something I think ultimately will get worked out, but hopefully at a time when small businesses aren't left hanging because of the uncertainty of getting access to this program.
Thank you. The next question we received is, Congress has passed 3 coronavirus relief laws to stop the spread of COVID-19 and to help small businesses stay afloat. But we know that no bill is perfect, and you just kind of alluded to that. So what would you like to see in the next corona relief package? I know there are a lot of things that have still been sort of unaddressed by the first 3. What would you like to see, and what do you anticipate coming down in that?
Well, I would like to see that what we've done so far is actually being implemented in a way that that accomplishes the goals we set out to achieve. And that's where the feedback from each of you is going to be so important, because we've learned a lot. We've anything this big and done this fast is going to have some problems. And we've been hearing back on everything from gaps to maybe some contradictory interpretation by the Treasury Department over what Congress intended. And so those are the sorts of things that you would expect to have to work through, and we are still doing that. So I think it's really beyond the $250 billion more for the Paycheck Protection Program. I think it's premature to talk about another $1 trillion or more bill. That's an incredible amount of money. And actually, it's hard to spend that much money very quickly. And we need to make sure it's spent as effectively and as responsibly as we can. There has been some talk about other things that we might be able to do. Congress will, we're out of session until May the 4th. That was just extended by both in the House and the Senate. So it's going to be a little hard for us to do much legislating other than by unanimous consent for this Paycheck Protection Program. But please send us your ideas. One of the ideas people have come forward with is said infrastructure would be a good way to help stimulate the economy and do something we know we need to do anyway. And we all understand the importance of that in our state because we're a fast growing state. And I'm happy to take that up But I want to make sure that what we've done so far works the way we intended it, and where we need to fill some gaps and replenish funds because we have been successful in getting that to some of our small businesses. I think that should be the priority.
Sorry, speaking of the funds that have already come through, when do we expect that, I know businesses have started receiving some of the funding for the PPP program. I think with the EIDL program that they're still waiting on those funds to come through. When do we expect those funds to start flowing? And what happens when the money runs out? Because I think we're hearing some concerns that it's inadequate to deal with some of the businesses' needs out there.
Yeah, this program is also in addition to what I described a little bit earlier, and a $10,000 advance should come more or less immediately. And I would encourage you to talk to your lending institution specifically. We've been working with the Texas Bankers Association, with the SBA, with Treasury and others to try to coordinate all this. And unfortunately, there's been a need for a little bit of additional time on a bank by bank basis so they can understand what the guidance is and what they're authorized to do and the like. But I think checking with your nearest SBA certified lender, probably an institution you have a relationship already, would be the best thing. Elsie will probably have some other light she can shed on that as well. But I am supportive of allocating additional resources to funding this program, and in the tune of $250 billion. I never thought I would be voting on legislation that spent that much money, but this is an emergency. And we are, as President Trump has said, we are on a war footing against this virus and against the economic damage that it's caused. And so we have to be prepared to do things in an emergency maybe we wouldn't do in the regular course of business in order to respond.
So along those lines, and you mentioned in your earlier remarks that Congress included direct financial assistance for Texas families in the passage of the three pieces of legislation. And you mentioned that, that's upwards of $3,400 for some families. Can you talk a little bit about who qualifies for the checks and how soon Texans can expect to receive those funds?
These funds, this direct financial assistance is already en route. And I think Secretary Mnuchin said that, made an announcement about this morning. So this is happening as we speak. I would recommend that if you are interested in knowing if you qualify according to the financial terms that Congress set out, you can go on the IRS's website and you can actually go through their tracking program there to see where your check is when it's likely to show up in your bank account. For people who filed a 2019 tax return already, it's a little bit easier because the Treasury has current information. For others, like that have not filed an income tax return, let's say you're on Social Security, it may take a little longer to work through that just because you may have to get a paper check sent to you. But the basic qualifications are, if you make up to $75,000, you can receive a $1,200 check, a couple $2,400, and $500 for each child under the age of 17, for a maximum of $3,400 for a family with an income of $150,000 or less. So this is meant to provide a financial lifeline to pay the necessities of life while perhaps they process through unemployment compensation benefits and the like, or living off of their savings. Unfortunately, the wheels of government turn slow, and when you're trying to spend this much money, it really is a huge monumental challenge. But I'm proud that we've all been hyper-focused on delivering relief as soon as possible, because if we all can imagine what it's like to go without a paycheck each day, and it's harder and harder for the most vulnerable people in our state and country. So I can assure you that the IRS is working double time to get this done ASAP.
Senator, for Texans who have lost their jobs during this pandemic, can you share information about what is available to them by way of unemployment insurance? I know that, again, there was some relief, additional relief for the unemployment insurance programs across the country. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. In Texas, if you apply for unemployment insurance benefits, you do it through the Texas Workforce Commission. And I alluded to that earlier. I know their web page and their online connection has been overwhelmed. And talking to Governor Abbott, he's got additional people and resources coming to the aid of folks who are applying for unemployment insurance benefits. One of the priorities was to make sure that it was broadened to include workers not traditionally eligible, like self-employed Texans and independent contractors, Uber drivers and the like. Or if you work for a nonprofit that doesn't pay into the system, we wanted to expand, and we did expand this on a temporary basis. We also lengthened the duration that you can receive benefits by 13 weeks after you've exhausted state benefits. And we've added an additional $600 from the federal government on top of the state benefits through July. So as I said, I've heard that an unprecedented number of people are applying at the Texas Workforce Commission. They've issued guidelines when Texans should call based on their area code to try to manage this. But let me just say that I know the delay is aggravating, but the good news is, if there is good news, is that the unemployment benefits can be paid retroactively, so that no Texan will be penalized for not being able to reach the Texas Workforce Commission with their application. You're eligible to receive benefits based on your date of unemployment and not the date that you actually file with the Texas Workforce Commission.
I think that will provide some much needed relief for our families. So thank you for that. The last question we have for today is that a lot of our members have questions regarding the technical requirements tied to the SBA loans. I know we're hearing from some of our members that they've applied but they haven't heard anything yet. What is the best way for each business to figure out the specifics for their particular situation? Is it to contact the local SBA office, or in your opinion, what is the best way for each business to figure out how to navigate this?
Well, you'll want to hear from Elsie Collins about that, but let me take a stab at it, and she can expand on or correct anything I've said that's not exactly accurate. I think the best way to do this is to talk to your local bank or credit union. If they're an SBA certified lender, then they're going to have some experience dealing with this, and they'll also know more about your individual circumstances and be able to tailor it to your loan to your particular needs. But we intentionally included $275 million for counseling, training, and related assistance to people affected by COVID-19 through grants to SBA resource partners, including the small business development centers, so businesses can get targeted guidance on how to take advantage of all the resources that that are available. So I would, in addition to your local SBA certified lenders, I would encourage you to reach out to your local SBA office. Elsie can comment on that as well, or your local small business development center, of which there are 1,000 across the country. To find your local small business development center, you can visit the SBDC website at americassbdc.org. That's americassbdc.org. And of course, if you have additional questions, please reach out to Colin McLaughlin, my North Texas Regional Director, and we'll get you the information you need.
Well, Senator, thank you so much. I know there are a number of questions that have continued to pop up in our Q&A box and our chat boxes. We will get those over to your office today, and we will have those answers sent out to everybody who is registered for this call today. And I know that you have another call you have to jump on, so I want to thank you very much on behalf of the Chamber for joining us and for speaking to our members this morning. And thank you for everything you're doing, your leadership in Congress, in the Senate. And please stay safe, and we will catch up with you on the other side of this.
Excellent. Thank you. Stay safe yourself.
Thank you. Elsie, thank you so much for being with us today. We have Elsie Collins, who serves as the Deputy Director for the U.S. Small Business Administration here in our Dallas-Fort Worth District Office. She has 27 years of government service, with the majority of those years being the processing director for the SBA Office of Disaster Assistance. So I think if anybody could handle many of these questions, I think we have the right person with us this morning to do that. She assists the district director, Herb Austin, in the management of the district office and oversees operations and the delivery of the SBA's programs and services in our region, which includes 72 counties in North Central Texas and East Texas. She is a former financial planner and holds a BBA in finance. And we are really honored to have you with us, Elsie. Thank you so much for being here. I know I've seen a lot of questions popping up related to the SBA assistance in our Q&A box and our chat box. So we'll try to have some of those addressed with you on the call. And again, the rest of those questions will be addressed via email. And I do want to let you know that we have a number of organizations on the call with us today. We have our members from the U.S. India Chamber of Commerce. We have members from the Greater Dallas Asian American Chamber. We also have the Texas Consilium represented, and we have the Metro Crest Chamber of Commerce represented. So 3 different chambers, an industry organization. So the questions are definitely going to flow here, I think, in a minute. But before they do, I want to give you an opportunity to address our all of the groups that are on the call today. And thank you for being with us.
Good morning, and thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. First of all, I want to thank Senator Cornyn and his staff for their commitment to small business and for their leadership and the support of SBA as well. Just a couple of things right off the bat. Like Senator Cornyn said, Texas, as far as the overall loans under the PPP program, so far there have been close to, as of on the 13th, there were about 1 million loans under the PPP program that had been approved, and that accounted for about $247 billion, and that was as of the 13th, as far as nationwide. And that was about 4,600 lenders that were participating. New lenders are being added all the time. And for Texas, like Senator Cornyn had indicated, Texas was leading in terms of the total number of loans. Through the 13th, about 88,000 PPP loans have been approved for Texas businesses, and so for about $21 billion. And so we're continuing to add new lenders throughout, added to be able to offer PP loans, and so we'll continue to update you on that as well. First of all, what I'd like to do is kind of just go over the 4 main programs that SBA has with regard to COVID-19, and then I want to make sure that I address an issue with regard to the status of the economic injury disaster loans and make sure that we've got the right number and right contact in terms of how to check the status of the loan. So right off the bat, there are the 4 programs that are available. One of them is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program that everybody is familiar with, also known as the EIDL. That was the program or the vehicle that was put in place prior to the CARES Act, and it allowed businesses to apply for an economic injury disaster loan. It was a 3.75 interest rate, and the term was up to 30 years. We also added a $10,000 advance component to that economic injury disaster loan program. And I know there's some questions on that, so I'll speak to that in a second. And the second was the Paycheck Protection Program, and that particular program is administered, or the funds are coming from the lenders, as opposed to the economic injury that's coming direct, that's a direct loan from SBA. With regard to the lenders, one of the things that we've done here at the district, and we can make that available to the chamber that they can actually share with their membership, is we've got a list of course, all of the lenders that are offering the PPP loans. You can go to the SBA website and put in your zip code, and you can find a lender that's close to you. Here at the district, we've actually sampled the different lenders that are making the loans to figure out which lenders are actually making loans to individuals that may not necessarily have an existing relationship with them. That's one of the issues that we saw where, due to the volume, some of the lenders weren't able to make maybe loans to businesses that were not their customers or didn't have an existing business relationship. So we've sampled our lenders here in the Metroplex and came up with about, at least I think right now as of yesterday, about 25 lenders that are open to making loans to different businesses under the PP program, regardless of whether they have an existing relationship. And we can make that list available. We're trying to update it as frequently as we can. The third program that SBA was offering as part of COVID-19 disaster assistance is for those individuals who already have an existing SBA loan that they've already had. And so for those individuals that have an existing SBA loan, they can go to their SBA lender and ask that their payments, basically SBA is going to cover those payments for 6 months during that period of time. So that's something we want to make sure that all the businesses are aware of, those that have an existing SBA loan, that they can actually go to SBA or to their lender and request that SBA make those payments for them for that 6 months. And so that is available for those lenders. And then the fourth program that was in place was the SBA Express Bridge Loan Program. That was a bridge loan of $25,000 that was available to businesses who needed the bridge loan before they actually got their answer from SBA. So they would actually go to the bridge loan lenders and get a $25,000 express loan, and then when they got their economic injury disaster loan, those funds would be wiped out basically or refinanced with the economic injury disaster loan. So those are the four programs that were actually available as part of COVID-19. Now, one of the questions that was asked that I saw had to do with the status. I think this was presented to Senator Cornyn with regard to what do we do, how do we check the status of our loan? It's been a couple of weeks, it's been a week or so, and we may not have heard anything from SBA with regard to the economic injury disaster loan. Here at the district office, we don't have access to the system, but there is a customer service center for disaster assistance, and we have an 800 number where they can actually check the status. Early on during the process when they were making applications, due to the loan volume, there was a significant wait time. My understanding is they have resolved that and they've added additional staff to help with some of the questions that are coming in to the 800 line about the status of their loan. So I'd like to make sure that I identify that number and present that number for the economic injury disaster loan. If they're going to check the status of their loan, it's 1-800-659-2955, 1-800-659-2955 to check the status of the loan. So that is with regard to to check the status of the loan. The other question I think that came up has to do with the economic injury disaster loan and that $10,000 advance. There was a modification to the EIDL advance where it was based on the number of employees. That's just as far as what the advance is. If you had X number of employees, then the amount that they would advance would be based $1,000 per employee. But that doesn't impact the overall existing EIDL loan. So that's just the advance, and the amount that is advanced is that portion that does not have to be paid back. So, and one other thing has to do with the loan amount on the economic injury disaster loan. I know there was some guidance or some news reports or indications that SBA had dropped the amount of the maximum loan amount. the maximum loan for the economic injury disaster loan is still at that $2 million. It wasn't dropped to $15,000 or $25,000 or something like that. But that is, those guidelines are still in place in terms of what that maximum loan amount is. So I will stop at that point and then take in and go over any additional questions that were not addressed with what I had to say.
Thank you, Elsie. So I'm just going to try to field as many of these as I can. The 1-800-659-2955 number that is specifically for the EIDL EIDL loans that you mentioned, right? That's not for the Paycheck Program.
Right, no. The 1-800-659-2955 is specifically to check the status of your SBA EIDL loan. For the PP
EIDL loan, the EIDL loan, perfect. Great. So we have a question here. If we applied for the PPP, are you able to hear me? If we applied for the PPP, do we need to register for the EIDL separately, or is it automatic as a part of our PPP application?
It is a separate application. So to apply for the economic injury disaster loan, you would go to the SBA website, which is www.sba.gov. And then there you could actually apply for the economic injury disaster loan. One other thing that I want to go ahead on and say also is with regard to the economic injury disaster loan, due to the significant volume early on, that we had a different portal in place. And there was so much volume on that portal, it was a little bit slow, so they created a new portal. But there was an interim period in there before March 30th. It was like the Wednesday before March 30th, to where when people went to the website, there was an interim website that was put up to where you could download the paper application, complete it, and then upload it with some supporting documents. During that particular time, the applicants did not get a confirmation number. So if a business owner made application during, I think it was a 4-day period prior to March 30th, and they did not get an application number, then they would want to reapply, go back to the site and apply for the economic injury disaster loan, and then also as part of that, the EIDL advance is in there. And you'll know whether or not, if you applied on March 30th, when that new portal, the application number will start with a 3. If it started with a 3, then you're in that latest portal. Now, the applications before that may have started with a 2, and you can contact the customer service line, and they can let you know what the status of that loan is. In some cases, they may have received an email that says, hey, we need you to go and reapply. But you can check the status at the 800 number, 659-2955. And then also there's a follow-up email address as well. I can send that to you, to where if you can't get them on the phone, you can email your status to that customer service center. And I've got an email for that I can email you afterward.
Okay, wonderful. The next question we have from one of our fellow chambers is, our chambers of commerce, which are 501c6 organizations, eligible for the EIDL loan?
Okay, the way the current interim ruling is, it's not specified that they are actually eligible. But my understanding is that it was brought to the attention of the legislators, and so they're looking, I know that if someone had indicated that is something that they were going to look at, but right now it doesn't specify that the 501c6 are eligible under the PPP. But
not under the
PPP,
under the EIDL program, the EIDL program.
Under the EIDL program, yes, they are eligible.
Okay.
And then also, one other thing I might add, if there is a change to the PPP, in that interim ruling, when they make an update, they're putting it in the interim ruling, and you can see it on the SBA website and on the U.S. Treasury website.
Got it. Next question here is, my SBA approved lender told me our Paycheck Protection Program loan, so this is a PPP loan application, was approved last Thursday, However, we have not heard anything about the funding. Do you know how long it should take for the funding to hit on an approved loan application?
Okay, for the PPP program, the lenders have to close and disperse that loan within 10 days of that approval. So that's 10 calendar days.
Got it. The local SBA seems to be overwhelmed, and it's taking days back and forth. And it feels, I think this is what this person is saying, it feels like everyone's sort of in the dark and sort of feeling their way around. Do you know when additional guidance is going to be offered by the SBA to lenders to keep moving through the loan package programs?
Okay, so we were on a call, well, with regard to the lenders, you know, SBA is providing them with the guidance in terms of the guidelines for processing those loans. And so we're pushing down the information to the lenders as quick as we possibly can. And so, you know, they've got a site where they've actually posted some of the information. So more information is being provided to the lenders. For example, there was in terms of how they were going to do the note and things of that nature. So they've pushed that down. Also, with regard to eligibility questions, we've set up like a hotline for those lenders to send specific questions with regard to eligibility. So they have more information now than they had, and they'll continue to provide some additional information. So that's with regard to the information going to the lenders for the PPP loan. So it's constantly improving. We had a call on Monday with our leadership in headquarters, Capital Access, that's providing the guidance. And one of the things is that, you know, with the new program, it's a new program, so you don't have a standard operating procedures. So it was created in a short period of time, so you've got SBA and Treasury working together to make sure that we push down the appropriate, you know, guidelines and the correct information to the lenders. So it's you know, it's getting better, and we've set up some internal processes with our headquarters to give them the resources to get some of their questions answered. But it was a little slow going with regard to some of the information, but it should be getting better each day.
Okay, this is a question we got. It's somewhat specific. I'm a woman-owned business who does not qualify for assistance due to the nature of my business, which is leased real estate. I have leased to a woman-owned business for 27 years. She also leases to 80 small merchants. In light of the businesses being closed, her business may not survive. How can there be assistance for a business such as ours who does not meet the defined boundaries of some of the loan programs?
Okay, so and I can take that one offline,
sure,
that particular question,
okay,
because I just need to get an understanding of why it's not eligible under both programs. So if you'll email me that one, then I can talk to the business owner and make sure that I'm clear on it and kind of walk them through that.
Yep. Let's see. All right. We have some, I know we have about 15 more minutes, so we'll try to get through as many of these as we can. We have another 15 questions here.
Okay.
Can you provide some additional information for 1099 workers?
Okay, so for the 1099 and independent contractors, they would apply for the PPP loan just like others. The only difference was they could not apply until the 10th. But the process is the same in terms of the information that the lender's going to need. It's universal. You know, they're going to look at their tax returns and submit the 1099 information to them, but the eligibility is the same with regard to determining what that monthly salary expense is, multiplying it 2.5 plus minus, you know, any idle proceeds or whatever for the advance. But it should be the same. So there shouldn't be a significant difference, but they're going to look at the same basic financial information.
Got it. Next question. Under the PPP loan program, for headcount purposes, and I'm assuming this is to keep it forgivable, are you allowed to replace an employee, meaning you hire a new employee to maintain the same headcount, but you might maybe fire an employee or lay off an employee, but hire a different employee? Would that count against you for headcount purposes?
It won't count. It won't count when you're saying count against you. You're talking about whether or not it would fit the category for forgiveness. But
I believe so.
The key issue is they're looking at the payroll expenses, what they're allocating. As long as they are allocating that money specifically for what it was designed for, payroll expenses, and then also keeping the number employed, keeping that number employed as well. So if they, were significantly dropped down to 5 employees, yeah, that would be an issue. But if you had to replace one other employee because you let another one go, you're going to be fine there. But the key thing is to show that, have the receipts or the documents to show that those funds were specifically for payroll, and that 75% of those PPP proceeds were used for payroll expenses, and the 25% for those utilities and the utilities and rent and things like that.
Got it. In regards, or I think this is, okay, with regard to the PPP program, if a small business is not able to reopen after 8 weeks, is there any discussion or plan to provide additional weeks of cash flow to the business?
Now, as far as additional cash, for now, as far as I know, there isn't under the PPP because, those guidelines were set when the program, so there wasn't, it was based on those 8 weeks, not any additional time. So that would only happen if there were changes that would come down, from the legislators about changing the program or extending it. Now, that's with regard to the PPP. But keep in mind, for the economic injury disaster loan program, it had a longer injury period. So if on that loan, it's not designed, there wasn't a time period, it's for like the 8 weeks. So I think that if it's under normal circumstances with an economic injury, let's say that when they calculated the economic injury disaster loan and it was for like 2 months of working capital, but it turns out that we were still in this situation and you didn't return to normal until 4 or 6 months later. Under normal circumstances, under the EIDL program, that loan could be increased to cover that additional period of injury. But, the COVID-19 is different as far as, the guidelines. The guidelines haven't changed, but I know they are using expedited methods with regard to how they determine a set injury period. So it's not uncommon to have an EIDL loan to where you've estimated 2 months of working capital, and then it turns out that your business doesn't return for 4 months, that you may have to ask for an increase under that economic injury. And so that is something that we would have to see on that. But as far as on the PPP loan, that period is already set in terms of that program. So we can't just, your lender can't modify that program.
Okay, that is. Small businesses are using more of PayPal and Square, where they have a direct relationship with these financial and where there's a question about PayPal and Square, but I'm not sure this is a very clear question.
Well, on the
I'm going to ask the individual to clarify the question.
Okay, and PayPal
we'll
and
move
Square,
on. Hopefully they'll clarify that question. Say that again.
Okay, PayPal and Square, were added as new lenders for the PayPal program. Okay, so, but regardless of whether you're using PayPal or ABC Bank, they all have to use the same guidelines, same terms but they were just added as additional lenders because, alternative lenders. So it should basically be the same in terms of the program. There shouldn't be any change in terms of the guidelines or anything like that. They're all going to be the same, but we're just adding additional lenders to offer the PPP.
Great. When it comes to PPP forgiveness, is it going to be up to the bank who originated the loan, or is it going to be the SBA that has to approve the forgiveness?
No, it's going to be the lender.
Under the EIDL program, how is the maximum or other loan amount determined?
Under the economic injury program, normally prior to COVID-19, it was based on looking at the expenses. It doesn't replace dollar for dollar lost sales, but looking at the overall expenses and what working capital is needed to have it return to normal. So it's whatever the operating expenses are, and let's say they were taking the operating expenses and lost profit, the profit margin times 4 months. You got expenses of $8,000 a month times 4 months, and it's $32,000. That's a simple, expedited way of doing it. But it's really just going to depend on really what those expenses are, and all of the they're going to look at their financials to show what those expenses are, and that's how they're going to determine really what that working capital is. So what that final amount is. Now, if they're saying automatically initially there was some discussion that they were going automatically with a 2 months or a 4 month working capital. So it was, hey, here's your expenses times 4, here's what you're eligible for, and then advancing, a portion of that advance, giving that, and then the resulting amount would be the actual loan amount. So once they actually talk to their loan officer who's processing the file, they can give them a little bit more detail. At the same time, if there's a question, the loan officer will work with them, if there's something that's not clear on their on the information they submitted, or if they need additional information.
So under PPP expenses, can you provide some guidance as to what is allowable under transportation? What does that mean?
I'll have to take a look specifically at the transportation part when you're talking about under the transportation expenses,
allowable expenses.
Yeah, I'll have to double check on the transportation, unless you're talking about the industry or you're just talking about, because normally it's going to be that rent and utilities, that 25%. So on that transportation, I'll take a look at it. One other thing too is with regard to some of the questions we've got the interim rule that's posted. And also on our website, we've got frequently asked questions, probably got 26 questions that I can make that available to everybody, and that will help guide it through specifically on the PPP. So I can make sure I send that to you if you send me your email after this, and I'll get those documents to you.
Great. I'm just going to provide your email address to this individual so they can get the answer directly.
All right, no problem.
The next question is, how do you check on the status of a PPP application when they received a loan application reference number? Now, the PPP applications are submitted directly to the bank with a loan officer, is that correct? And so yes, they would need to go back to their bank where they applied for the PPP loan to check on the status of that, is that right?
Yes. Yes, the banks will let them know, and so they can actually they can check with their lender. But my understanding is the banks are getting back with them, and so because I've heard from quite a few individuals who have received their confirmation that it is approved and what their amount was, but it came from their lender.
Got it. I have a couple more questions here. So this is one of our members that's saying they got approved for the PPPL program and they received the funds on April 13th. And they have to make payroll today for the pay period March 1st to March 31st. And the question is, to what pay period would the funds apply? Is it retroactive or is it just going forward, I think is the question here.
It should be going forward, but I'll double check that. It should be going forward.
Okay,
Because
the next.
Keep them in 3 weeks.
I've seen, okay. I think I've seen some guidance that it's retroactive. I think maybe we can get back to them on that one.
Yeah, and it could. Yeah, and I probably have that answer right here. If you send me the email on that, then
yes, I will do that.
I will double check that.
Yep. The next question is, I'm sorry, 1 second. Okay. Okay. Can a business apply for the PPP to just pay for utilities while their employees still apply to get paid by the Texas Workforce Commission, which means the application would be very low and only for utilities?
That I have to check because the whole purpose of that program was payroll protection, is to keep them employed. So if I don't know that that lender will make that loan for only the utilities. If it was only the utilities, then you're better off going to SBA for the economic injury disaster loan.
Got it. Last question here. We are still waiting to hear back. Do we continue to follow up, or what do you suggest? We do not want to inundate the system, but receiving answers would be most appreciated.
Okay, so I'm assuming they're talking about the economic injury disaster loan on that one as far as the status. So it's got to be the economic injury disaster loan.
Yes.
I would check the status today and send an email to the customer service that I'm going to provide you the email on. But that's not going to inundate it. You know, they're going to respond to that. I was hoping this week we'd have a better idea as far as really what the time frame is, and so you know, hopefully I'm hoping that we'll get another briefing by Friday to let us know where the disaster processing is in terms of the time frame. I just don't have a good time frame right now because the time frames that we were provided have not held true. So hopefully by the end of the week, I'm hoping that we'll have a better idea of some of the time frames.
And we got one more question here. Can an employer use the EIDL fund to pay its independent contractors? EIDL funding.
On the EIDL loan, there isn't a specific guidance that says specifically for independent contractors. They're looking at really what's on your profit and loss in terms of what your normal expenses are. But because of the PPP loan, there's probably going to have to be some cross-reference to where I know that they can include it with the PPP because the independent contractors have to pay themselves. I mean, they get to apply themselves. So the problem or the question that's going to come up from a processing, if the independent contractor is eligible for a PP loan themselves and they go and get that loan, why would that employer include it in their expenses to get a loan for that? So we want to make sure that there's not a duplication there to where that independent contractor is eligible to go get a PPP on their loan and then the business owner is going to include it in their expenses. They're probably going to back that out because there's possibly duplication there.
Got it. I think we have answered all of the questions we have received. I think this question was asked and answered before. but the question is, when will the SBA issue final guidance on loan forgiveness calculations for the PPP?
When you say guidance for the calculation, for the PPP,
For forgiveness.
that is for forgiveness. In the interim rule that's out there, there's guidance on the forgiveness, and then also in the supporting frequently asked questions, there's a couple of questions on that forgiveness as well. So I believe that's already out there. And I can send that to you as well.
Okay, this is a clarification on the question about an employer applying for PPP and paying independent contractors. The question is not intended for duplication. The issue with the PPP loan for independent contractors is that most banks have not yet made the application process available, even though the SBA opened the application up to independent contractors on April 10th. So I think the question is to carry them maybe over the last period of time when people could apply for PPP as an employer, but not as an independent contractor. I guess we're referring to that interim period.
Okay. Well, in all honesty, if a business had applied to SBA and it was on their financial statements as far as like salary expense or here's what we're paying, or it would have been in there, and it probably would have been picked up in the calculation. So for under that economic injury, they would not have pulled out and deducted it, because when they submitted their profit and loss statements and actually on their tax returns, if they're going to pull them from the IRS, it's actually going to show that expense. So it would have been included in that economic injury loan. So at that time, so it would have been included there because they would not have made that distinction. So, and I don't believe if there's guidance there now for them to ask specific questions and pull that out, I'm not really sure of that. But under normal processing, it would have been included on their expenses and it would have been eligible under the EIDL program.
So the last question, we just have about a minute here. What proof do independent contractors need to submit as a part of their PPP loan? And that's going to be, that can be fielded by a bank, right, when they're applying for that loan?
Yeah, the banks are going to ask them, they're probably going to take a look at their Schedule C for 2019.
Okay, they're going to look at their Schedule C.
Ask them, they'll probably ask for their Schedule C and their 1099.
Got it. So everyone, I want to thank you, Elsie. Thank you so much for being with us, for answering all of these questions. I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. I know we got a lot of questions asked and answered on behalf of our members, and I want to thank you for that. And also thank you for being a resource, a continuing resource for our members and all of our partner organizations. I know we had several different organizations represented on our call today. Of course, the U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce and our members, the Greater Dallas Asian American Chamber, our partner at the Texas Consilium, the Metro Crest Chamber of Commerce, and then our sister chamber down in Houston, the Greater Indo-American Chamber of Commerce of Houston, Greater Houston. So I want to thank you for answering all of our members' questions and for being a resource for us. We really sincerely appreciate it. We hope you're getting enough rest and please stay safe. And on behalf of all of us here at the Chamber, we're here for you. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach out to the Chamber at info@usicoc.org, or you can reach me at president@usicoc.org. I do want to note, we did see some additional questions come through for Senator's office. We will get those questions over to Senator Cornyn's office, and we will make sure that they reach back out to you directly. So if you did not hear your questions asked or answered, please know that we are not ignoring you. We will get those questions over to the Senator's office to get those answered for you. So with that, I want to thank everyone. Please stay safe, and please know that the Chamber is here for you if there is anything that we can do for you. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.